No, I feel like a star.
Hello, sir. You're here to play the part of Ojas Patel. What we're looking for is, oh my God, what do I think of myself? You need to be devilishly handsome. You need to neurotically adjust your clothing, picking at where your shirt is tucked, fiddling with your hair, with everything that seems like it's not perfect at the time. There's always got to be something, some very specific thing that you're avoiding doing because it's bad for you. Dude's got to have jokes. You got to have jokes. You need to be a banging cook. I laugh really loud. I have a really haughty laugh. And I'll reiterate, gotta be devilishly handsome. Part of the challenge of being an Indian in America is that I can't take much about myself for granted in how I relate to the rest of American culture. Given that American is predominantly a white culture, Indian culture sits in that, is always a little bit other. I mean, it's evident in the color of my skin. It's evident in the sounds of my language, even my name. So this is kind of a sensitive thing for me. I'm pretty laid back. Generally, I don't get offended by a lot of things. No, that's not true. But most of the time I shut up about it. But when it comes to my name and when it comes to being compared in likeness to other brown people, these are two very sensitive things for me and things that I don't tolerate, things that I speak up about. Ojas? Am I saying that right? Ojas? Oh my God, it's Saeed! Saeed from Lost, but he is, one, Iraqi, and two, please don't call me that. If I'm at a party and people will be like, yo, you're cool. You're like Kumar from Harold and Kumar. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad you have a schema for cool Indians. You're like that other brown guy I know. If I had to pick a character in TV that most closely associates me, it'd probably be SpongeBob. It's not something I feel like I gravitate to as like a subject of conversation. You have to break down all these assumptions and understandings that a person already has to like actually talk about what I'm experiencing. And often it's an exhausting conversation where I don't even really get to talk about what I initially wanted to talk about. There was this this joke in Bubble Boy. There's a scene where these kids are like running after an ice cream truck, but it's not just an ice cream truck, it's an ice cream and curry truck. And there are children running behind with the dollar bill waving, and they're like, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. And then the camera pans over, and there's just like an Indian kid wearing a turban, waving a dollar bill, and he's like, cootie! I mean, that was a very formative experience I had in terms of my relationship to media. My first problem with it was like, we don't call anything curry. That's just for white people. White people call it curry. For us, it's just food. I don't know. The effect it had on me was like, oh, okay, this joke is not for me. It uses the stereotypes of Indians and what white people would know about Indians to make a joke about Indians for other white people. This is the world that I'm living in culturally, where American TV and movies are not concerned with getting my cultural experience right. Master of None is the first show that I've watched that gets it right. It sparked something in me. It was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I can relate to. I don't know, I feel like it does it effectively in a way that it doesn't centralize this as the subject of the show. I think that's good, because that's another thing that I think TV shows get wrong, is that when you're representing a character that's not white, there's all this like explanation that goes on, and that becomes the subject. I think it's more effective to have well-built characters that are just doing other things. There's this poem by Safia Sinclair. It's called The Art of Unselfing. And the poem is about this moment in the morning when the speaker's like drinking coffee and just reflecting on all like the big things about a sense of self that you kind of have to ignore day to day. It's not trying to get to any sort of understanding or resolution about it. It dwells in the conflict of being between two cultures. I think it's not particular to an Indian voice at all. That's something that I feel like is most representative of my experience. The writers and books that inspire me change as I go. Pretty much every time I read something new that shakes me, my own writing style changes. I read Beloved by Toni Morrison, and her treatment of the supernatural and the way she uses it to talk about love and loss, I feel like opened up a whole new toolkit for me to think about my own love, my own loss, and my own writing. For the sake of this, I'll walk you through my notebook. So this notebook has been with me for quite some time. I use it for a number of things, including ideas for stories, for poems. I use it for journaling if I have like an idea for any kind of thing. The first draft always goes in here. Writing is important to me because it's a way of keeping track of the places my mind goes. There's always some kind of insight or truth to be gleaned from it. And I feel like writing has always been a way for me to extract what I want from it and to keep it with me. Wow. It's pretty weird going through it. Old patterns of writing and thinking. Do we live in a culture of delusions, or does culture behave like a delusion? Just have here in caps, resist the technological imperative. Earlier in journaling and writing, like when I first got into it in high school, was so obscure. There was no goal at all to make it commensurable in any way, to make it accessible to any type of readers, because I didn't even want to understand what I was writing. But as I grew, I realized that the process of writing was a way for me to figure out what was going on within myself. I became much more careful about how I crafted my thoughts and emotions into words, so I could be careful about what I thought about myself, because certainly my writing has played a significant role in my impression of myself. My experience is inextricable from my cultural status. I'm privileged in a kind of way in that I can effectively weave between these two cultures, and it's part of being outside of both and within both. My junior year of high school, I kind of messed up. I made a big mistake that really messed my parents up. Before that, I had generally avoided confronting some of the questions I had about my identity and the problems that I was having with other people and in my family. I feel like I found out what my responsibility was, and I had totally ignored it, and I needed to make amends for that. I made a choice that I was going to start taking my life, my relationship with my family, and my relationship with myself more seriously. And while still being atheist, I started practicing Hinduism again. I would sit with my parents for prayers, and I would go to temple with them. I learned how to cook Indian food and rekindled a relationship with my parents and my culture that I was pretty bent on eliminating from my life altogether at the beginning of high school. And I think in those moments is when I started rebuilding a relationship with my soul. What I believe isn't contained within Hinduism. I mean, I think all religions are expressions of divinity, but ultimately religions are, to me, a cultural product, and Hinduism is included in that. But there's something about me that connects my practice of Hinduism with being Indian, and I'm happy that I'm in a place where I'm practicing, though I'm not fully aligned with the system of beliefs. I started going on these long walks. I would walk around my neighborhood. My neighborhood was pretty small. It was just 2 blocks and a cul-de-sac. I would walk around those 2 blocks for hours. It was, for me, meditation. It was the first time that I really started to learn how to be introspective. I feel like all the problems I was having with myself was an inability to really address what I was thinking about and what was troubling me. And in my walks, I learned how to ask myself important questions. It spoke to me because of the feelings of being an outsider. Meditation and walking by myself was a way for me to plug into the world. To this day, that choice that I made, it's central. Being an outsider now feels like not only a result of the experiences that I've had throughout my life, but also a choice. The more I grew into myself and got to know myself, I found that it was in some ways a gift, because naturally I'm inclined to be extremely reflective and spend a lot of time in my internal world. I feel like being an outsider allows me to do that even when I'm out in public. It gives me license to be as weird as I am when I'm just out in the world. I've always been in the process of trying to figure it out, the big it. And I used to be obsessed with it. I used to write obsessively about it. It wasn't until pretty recently, within the last year or two, that I discovered that I was asking the wrong questions. Wow, okay. Is it alright if I read this? How to make samosas. Part 1, ingredients. 1 full-time job. A 1-month vacation at your parents' house. 1 aged Indian mother, approximately 48 to 60 years. 2.5 knacks for fucking up. 1 pair of plaid pajamas. 1 pair of Bugs Bunny slippers. 1 group of old friends to avoid like the avian flu. Part 2, preparation. First, prepare the mother. The aging process is crucial. After picking, it takes 24 to 25 years for mothers to age just enough. When you've reached 13 years, pick up smoking pot. Stay generally stoned for about 5 years, but make sure to quit well before starting the samosas. Otherwise, the mother rots. Before transitioning from the pot phase, get into a 4-year college. This will begin the healing process, which extracts the flavor. Trust settles along the edges, and the worry lines fade. She'll say, "Why not be a lawyer?" And "Can you do me one small favor?" This is when you turn the temperature down. Let her simmer on low heat for a while. At your graduation ceremony, when she weeps with no restraint into your dad's shoulder, immediately remove from stove and let cool. Get a full-time job and move out almost immediately. Maintain a mostly absent presence, calling home maybe once a month. Your family should suffer a major loss within the next couple of years. Tell your boss you need to be home. Mix all of the ingredients together in a living room sitting on the couch with the mother. Make sure she's watching TV, something she enjoys watching but can ultimately do without, like Three's Company reruns. Schmooze the mother for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. The mother should sigh fine when ready. Part 3. Procedure. Leave it to the mother. You'll never make samosas like she does. Ooh, that's fucking dirty.